Blessed good day in our Lord. Brother Paulo Sanchez here, and today in this very important reflection, very timely reflection, perhaps you may be in one way or another reflected by the subject matter of this reflection. Let us aspire for, let us desire only peace. Nawa kapayapaan lamang ang maghari sa buhay natin. Nawa kapayapaan ng Diyos ang maghari sa mundo na ito in the Filipino language. May peace, the peace of God, reign in our lives and reign all over the world. Now, why talk about peace now? Well, aside from that, Christmas is coming, and we are reminded that Jesus Christ is the embodiment of peace, the peace of God. He is the Prince of Peace. In our very world right now, we are reminded of, and perhaps if you are not aware, perhaps through this you will now be reminded of, that there is an ongoing war between the nation of Israel and Hamas. And of course, this is not just exclusive to the war there, the violence happening there, the tragedy happening there. This is also something happening all over the world. We are reminded of that there is an ongoing war as well between Russia and Ukraine. But not just among nations, among states, there are forms of injustices and oppressions happening all over the world on basis of nation, on basis of race, on basis of creed, on basis of religious profession, on basis of lifestyle. We seem to find reasons, we seem to find ways to oppress, even harm each other, and that is a global tragedy we must confront. Thus, this reflection on peace. The desire of God is peace. Sobrang kabaligtaran po ang nangyayari sa mundo sa nais at kapahayagan ng Diyos na maghari ang kapayapaan. I am not coming into this reflection as someone directly affected by the conflict, the war between Israel and Hamas. I do not live in West Asia. I am only reading about this through the news, but be assured that I am also in one way or another deeply affected by all the visuals that I'm seeing, the kind of hurt, the kind of death, the kind of violence brought about by both sides to each other. But I'm not coming as someone living there, nor am I a Jew or a Muslim. I'm not coming into this reflection as an expert. I am not an expert on the land, the history, and the peoples of Palestine. I have heard a thing or two about them. I have heard about them particularly through a religious perspective, through a Christian worldview, a Christian reading of history. I have read some books, I have read some news, I have read and heard of some opinions from both sides about this issue, but I am not coming into this as an expert, nor will I pretend to be one through this reflection. Thirdly, I am not coming into this reflection as someone through irresponsible speculation, even irresponsible handling of ancient texts, of holy texts, to make speculations that will lead to the fanning of the flame of tension and war and violence between Israel and Hamas. I will not try to do that. I am not someone who will deepen the wounds and the scars on both sides. I hope I do not do this through this reflection. Perhaps you have taken a side on this, and it's important that you do your due diligence to study, to reflect, to discern, and to respond. I pray promoting God's peace on all of these issues, but you will not hear a particular side from me. This is not the point of this reflection. But rather, I am here to provide, I pray, one perspective among many, because we need perspective on issues like this. And I pray that through this perspective drawn from God's Word, drawn from His goodness, His upright, perfect righteousness, we may learn principles, at least a principle among many of God's principles, which I believe, no matter what your lifestyle or profession is, we really need more of right now. And indeed, praise be to God, His promise, His desire is that His peace may reign throughout the world. I am, however, coming into this reflection as a fellow human being. And I believe as fellow human beings, if you've been watching, if you've been reading, if you've been hearing about the conflict, the war between Hamas and Israel and all over the world as well, I believe you're deeply affected. I believe you're deeply disturbed. I believe you're deeply saddened by what's happening, even through the lens of social media and mainstream media. I think we are all discouraged, even depressed by what's happening, and we're wondering, why is this happening? Why for so long? If you're familiar with the conflicts and the wars in Palestine, this has been going on for decades. In modern history, if you go back further to ancient history, this has been going on for centuries, and peace remains so elusive, as a conclusion of one movie entitled The Kingdom of Heaven would say. It is so elusive, peace in this region, but also peace all over the world. And we're deeply affected by this because we are human beings. We are made with connection, for connection with each other. Regardless of race, regardless of creed, regardless of nation, we are meant for each other. That is God's beautiful design for us. And we are designed to purpose for harmonious relationship with each other. And we're seeing that broken down all over the world, and it breaks us inside. It steers us up. It makes a sense of neediness and longing in us as individual human beings to connect, to relate harmoniously with one another. It triggers that sense. And so I'm coming into this as someone in some way affected as well. But I'm also coming into this reflection as a Christian and a pastor at that. And so I am responsible for this issue. Not only am I familiar with the persons, the nations, the entities responsible or involved in this because of reference that are of cause and consequence to my religious faith and my religious faith community, it is also something that is formative in my personal life. I have read about the stories of people, of groups and nations based in that region. I read about their histories. I read about their stories. I read about lessons that are drawn from their experiences, and in some way I am connected with them. My Christian formation is deeply connected with them, and again, as I said, is of consequence. What happened there throughout the years, even now, is of consequence to my Christian formative being and our Christian communities. And so we must speak up. And we who follow Jesus Christ, all the more we should speak up, because Jesus Christ speaks about this issue, speaks about the reign of God. In fact, as I mentioned, He is the embodiment of the peace of God. And so if there must be an authority, a voice, an inspiration that will guide us through this issue and all other issues like this, it must be Jesus Christ, our Prince of Peace, also our Messiah, the one who embodies, fulfills, gives us the peace of God. I know so many, even among Christian faith communities right now, are so disturbed, even confused by what's happening. I plead with us, even if we take sides, let's always take the side of Jesus Christ. And what is Jesus Christ? What is the side of Jesus Christ? He is the way of peace. He is God's peace unto us. But speaking about Palestine, speaking about Israel, the land there, the people there, let me go back to prophetic vision through the prophet Isaiah in chapter 2. And here we will draw this lesson from this principle of the reign of God, the reign of peace. Because the intention of God always has been His reign. And His reign has always been qualified as a reign of peace. And in prophecies like Isaiah 2, we see the intention of God, the desire of God to reign all over the nations, not just Israel, not just in Palestine, but all over the world. And His kind of reign, His kind of rule is one where everybody enjoys His peace. And we who honor God, we who follow His Son Jesus, then should hear this call, should envision this vision, take on the burden and responsibility to seek, even struggle, that the reign of God may happen in our time and of course in the future. Allow me to journey with you to this prophetic word, Isaiah chapter 2, in particular verses 1 through 5. Allow me to read to you and journey with me, hear about this, learn from this. The word which Isaiah the son of Amos was concerning or saw concerning Judah and Jerusalem. Now it will come about that in the last days, could be referring to these days, could be referring to days in the future. Some would say this will refer to the millennium reign. I'm not so concerned about the details and the processes, but this is the desire. This is the intention. Now listen to the desire and the intention. The mountain of the house of the Lord will be established as the chief of the mountains, and will be raised above the hills, and all the nations will stream to it. Now notice, to what will all the nations come to? To what will they be so attracted of? To what which they will desire. And many peoples will come and say, come, let's go up to the mountain of the Lord, to the house of the God of Jacob, so that He may teach us about His ways. God's ways they will desire, God's ways they will seek for themselves. Now what about God's ways? Then that they may walk in His paths. Now what about these paths in which all nations must walk into? For the law will go out from Zion and the word of the Lord from Jerusalem, and he will judge between the nations and will mediate for many peoples. And they will beat their swords into plowshares and their spears into pruning knives. That is, I think, one of the highlights of this vision. That the weapons of war will be put down and will be turned into something, into the preservation and the promotion of life. That is the reign of God. Nation will not lift up a sword against nation, and never again will they learn war. That is very clear, resounding as well. There will be no more war in this reign of God, in this reign of peace. Of course, a quick application point before it transitions in verse 5. Come, house of Jacob, come to all of those listening to this prophecy. Let's walk in the light of the Lord. In other words, let's walk in His way. God desires His reign. His reign, obviously, as read here, is a reign of peace. But there's also a responsibility. Let us seek peace as well. Let us walk in His ways. And what are the ways of the Lord? What are the ways of God? They are the ways of peace. And again, who teaches us? Who inspires us about the way of peace? And we believe that to be the Messiah figure. We believe that is fulfilled through Jesus Christ, the Son of God. If you want to learn about the way of God, the way of peace, if you want to seek, even struggle towards the peace of God, learn from, follow, be inspired by, live by Jesus Christ, the Prince of Peace, the Messiah. And what did Jesus Christ preach when He was still here ministering? He preached about peace, peace for all the nations. How did Jesus Christ live even when those who opposed Him hurt Him deeply, even to the point of the cross? His response was that of peace. What did He do? How did He respond? How did He live by people who were considered different from Him? How are people different from us? How are people different from Jesus Christ? There are some types of people we label as the following. They are not one of us. We label certain people as non-believers, those who do not share our faith or religion. We label people as sinners, those who are in the wrong. We label people in certain sects even as infidels. Jesus responded with peace, even love towards all these different people. I remember how He responded to us. You see, we who are affected by disability, we are also like a nation in the world, scattered all over the world, affected by disability. And Jesus had eyes, Jesus had a heart, Jesus had compassion for us. He responded to our need with His peace and love. That is the way of peace. Not just so that there will be peace in the moment. I remember how Jesus stayed Peter dropping the knife in his act of retaliation. Jesus told Peter not to retaliate to those who were about to arrest him. It was not just for the sake of the moment or in the heat of the moment. Jesus promoted peace for the long term and for lasting effect. In fact, His response was to give of Himself so that peace may happen. And we know that by the giving of His own life to the point of the cross, through the giving of the self for the other, even the enemy, even the oppressor, even the one who causes harm to us, Jesus accomplishes, or at the very least desires, peace. Not just long-lasting peace, but a deep peace that will bind us all again. That will bind us all again, because Jesus understands Isaiah chapter 2. And I believe that is also Jesus' desire. Jesus' desire is that they will beat their swords and plowshares and their spears into pruning knives, as we read in verse 4. So Peter, put down the sword, give of yourself, as I have given myself for you. All of us learn to give of ourselves in humility, in generosity, in kindness and mercy, even to our enemies, so that peace may happen. So that in the hope that the seed that will fall will cause peace in our relationships and even in our world. In the hope that these who are enemies, oppressors, those who are different from us, may through our giving of self in the name of peace, understand peace, desire peace for themselves, and learn to live by the way of peace. And from that, a movement will happen. There will be peace in this world and in our time. And so, there will be the reign of God. To those listening, isn't that your desire? Isn't that your heart's longing as well? No matter which side you have taken up, no matter what cause you're fighting for, no matter how you're living right now, there is that peace of our lives, a peace in our hearts that desires the peace of God to reign. And so Jesus helps us, inspires us, guides us on how we will live by the peace of God. Now, how does this apply to the conflict, the war between Israel and Hamas? Again, I will not pretend to be an expert about these things, but again, drawing from the principle of God's reign of peace, here are some humble proposals for all of us listening, including myself. Number one, the war and violence must end, if not sooner, in the name of peace, in the name of God. Not war in the name of God, not harm in the name of God, peace in the name of God. Not later, but sooner, if not now. There must be a de-escalation happening, the putting down of the weapons and the bombs, and a resolution to struggle not against each other, but to struggle for peace. Peace expressed through two things: the preservation of life and the promotion of life. I believe the reign of God is characterized by those two things. Life is the most important thing here. Life is the common denominator. The preservation of life and the promotion of life. That is what these parties must aspire for when they think about putting down their weapons and ending up the struggle. A rabbi once said that concerning this latest issue, the war, the violence must end soon. Either Israel or Hamas must end this quick. Now, if I may add, if they will end this quick, if that is the recourse they have to take, violence and war, they must end this quick. But I must add, they must do so with proper consideration and responsibility over human life, the preservation of life, and the promotion of life, that is dignity. They must consider it in terms of compassion, and so they must not take a path. They must not approach this war and violence with disregard for life, even the life of one child, even the life of one enemy soldier. They must consider how they conduct themselves if that is the only recourse. But I believe that the better recourse is to seek peace as soon as possible. Now, I understand some people are frustrated. Some people will say that this region, Palestine, is always bound for war. But I believe that the overcoming notion, vision, prophecy of the reign of God will inspire us to keep striving for peace. Keep striving for peace. Not only that, I also believe that that is the politically correct, politically sane, and morally right thing to do. Especially if you want to galvanize global support towards your cause, seek the end of violence, seek peace instead. And in relation to that, number two, there must be again the resumption of negotiations towards a baseline compromise. Just a baseline compromise in which we can live with each other in human dignity and harmonious relations towards peace. And again, I know some of us are frustrated. It's been years, decades of attempting to negotiate. Too much talk, too much giving has happened. It's easy to point the other side as the one who violates the agreements, who is not willing to talk, is not willing to compromise. It's easy to say that I have given up so much, but we have to keep giving up of ourselves. We have to keep giving up what we can give so that the other may learn as well. The other may build trust with us. The other may also be, in the name of love and compassion, be forced to the negotiation table and discuss with us. And so the global community is very important here. We must speak up. We must add the pressure. We must also propose means and mechanisms, even models, so that a more perhaps effective negotiation might take place. So instead of fanning the flames of war and violence from both sides, we must present them alternative means. We must present them the way of peace and bring them back to the peace table. And again, teach them how to give to each other just for a baseline compromise. Just for the sake of the children, just for the sake of the women, just for the sake of every life, learn to value life, preserve life, promote it, and just come up with an agreement where we don't shoot ourselves, bomb ourselves, and destroy each other. Number three, people should hold their leaders, their governments accountable. And it begins with the people of Israel and Hamas. You know them better than we do. You know how they think better than we do. Leaders are accountable to God for how they conduct themselves. And so we must tell them, the people of Israel, the people of Hamas, the people in Palestine, the Arab world, we encourage you to tell your leaders to consider their ways. Are they conducting themselves towards peace, and they're conducting themselves peacefully? And if they must go to war and violence, towards what end and in what manner? We must be the conscience of God to our governments, to those who have power, to those who hold the nukes, to those who hold the bombs, to those with the air fighter jets, to those with the rockets. We must tell them, consider your ways. Is this the way forward? Is this the peaceful way? Is this the way of God? Because God is not mocked, and God will judge you. God will judge you. That is our hope, that at the end of all this, God will judge, and He will establish through Christ, Through the Messiah, He will establish His reign. But why wait for that? We are part of this. We are responsible in seeking and struggling towards the peace of God in this world. And so I speak now to my brothers and sisters who follow Jesus, the Christian communities. Let us, yes, share Jesus as a Messiah, as the Savior. But also let us share Jesus in a way that is not just some form of spiritual escapism towards heaven, but as someone who has transformative effect in our world, in our lives today. Jesus has that power. Jesus has that authority. Jesus has a desire, for it is God's desire to establish, to transform even different parties and nations so that peace in this world will happen. What is your role? What is your contribution? Where is our voice, church? Where is our voice? Are we so focused on what is to come? Or are we so concerned about every life and the will of God pertaining to today? And let me add this. Are we so concerned about a kind of peace that is personal, we have forgotten a peace that is social and transformative, even a radical peace? Have we forgotten that Jesus gave Himself not just for you and me, but for the whole world? That is the power of the cross. That is the message of the cross. That by giving yourself, not just for your own safety, not just for your own salvation, but for the transformation and the peace and the love in this world, give of yourself, it will take effect. It will take effect in God's great scheme of things. Nothing is wasted that is done for Him. Nothing is wasted that promotes His will. And so are you so comfortable with your personal peace? If you're someone who is personally disturbed right now, I'm praying for you. Seek peace in the personal, individual level. But let us not forget the kind of peace that is for all as well. Let us seek peace in Palestine. Let us seek peace in Ukraine. Let us seek peace in our countries and our communities. And at the end of the day, may there be only peace. Not just in Christmas, but for all times. Not just in the future time of God's reign to come, but God's reign in the here and now. God's peace be upon us. God bless you. We love you.